Hi, everybody. Welcome to Two Out the First. It's December 30th. I'm Ryan Balaji. Thanks for being here. It's been a little while since we've done a show, but we're starting a new season, even though it's still 2024 on the calendar. It's 2025 in terms of the PGA Tour. We've got the Century starting the year off out at Kapalua. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We'll also get into a couple other topics in the rundown today, including PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan's salary and the Form 990 for the PGA Tour. We'll explain what all that means if you are not a nonprofit tax wonk. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about Tiger Woods' 49th birthday, maybe what to expect from the future. I've seen some rosy hopes and predictions based out of all that, so we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we'll close things out with another change from Victor Hovland, maybe the Patrick Harrington of his era in terms of making changes, but he's making another one before the year's end. I want to get a quick shout out to our sponsor, which is Swannies Golf. Check them out at swannies.co. Use the promo code GolfNewsNet25 and save 25% off your order. They're doing awesome stuff. They've got great stuff for this time of year and spring hoodies. Man, they're the best. So check them out there at swannies.co. Now, let's get into Jay Monahan's pay, because that has been a hot subject going back to the beginning of this entire PGA Tour live golf mess, and maybe even a little bit more beyond that. So each year, the PGA Tour has to submit a tax return, corporate tax return. Well, effectively a corporate tax return. Just like anybody else, just like any other corporation, just like any other individual. They're a little bit different because they're the parent company, right? PGA Tour Inc. is a membership-based organization. It is a not-for-profit. So they have a different form of tax returns that they have to file to the IRS. And they're filed in what's called a Form 990. So back in the day, before I used to do this, I used to work in public policy and have a master's in that kind of stuff. I used to work for a think tank in DC that specialized in not-for-profits called the CNP at the Brookings Institution. So, and it's a topic that's really interesting, but it is kind of wonky. But nevertheless, it's worth getting into because the PGA Tour takes in a lot of money and it passes through a lot of that money. It also gets obvious tax breaks because it is a not-for-profit organization, and a not-for-profit organization that is not only member-driven, but also driven by those who are beneficiaries of the PGA Tour, primarily charities over the years. But the PGA Tour's tax return is kind of complicated. They have a lot of assets. Unlike a lot of member-driven organizations, they have a lot of assets. They have golf courses. They have intellectual rights. They have other stuff that's just most member organizations don't have. They have members and dues and fees, and that's the end of it. Well, that's not really the case here. So we've seen a couple of different articles written about this, and I thought I wanted to give a shout out to the Money in Sport newsletter. Tron from No Laying Up actually tweeted this out. I believe it was today. I'm pretty sure it was today. And the graphics that go along with this are really helpful to kind of see a little bit more about the tax return, but you can see this yourself. You can see the PGA Tour's Form 990s. They are required by law to be made available. They're available at something called GuideStar. There are other places that do it, but GuideStar is probably the easiest and most accessible. If you want to look at this stuff yourself, instead of taking our word for it, it's totally up to you. Obviously, this is the one for 2023. The one for 2024 has not been filed yet, and it'll be a while for that to happen. So what Money in Sport did was kind of take a breakdown into the tax return and look at it from the perspective of what they think might alarm a PGA Tour member, someone who is maybe rank and file, who's trying to figure out, hey, what am I getting here? And what am I getting out of my membership? What am I getting for my executive team, right? And I think the biggest kind of framing of this from Money in Sports perspective is executive compensation, right? If you look at Jay Monahan's salary over the last 5 years, it has gone up substantially. He made $23.3 million in total compensation for 2023. That is an increase of nearly $5 million from the $18.6 million he earned in 2022. Go back to before the new TV contract really kicked in, he was making $8.9 million in 2019. This makes him, in terms of sports commissioners, one of the highest paid, but also in terms of total revenue, it makes him absolutely one of the highest paid relative to the amount of money that the PGA Tour brings in. Now, the money the PGA Tour brings in is a little bit different than the NFL. There's licensing fees that come into the NFL. All kinds of different things come into the NFL that don't come in really with the PGA Tour to the same degree. But needless to say, the NFL makes a whole lot more money than the PGA Tour does. And Roger Goodell gets paid as a lower percentage of that total revenue and, frankly, total wealth created compared to Jay Monahan. What's also interesting to point out is not only the increase in Monahan's pay, which again went from $8.9 million in 2019 to $23.3 million in 2023, an increase of nearly $15 million over those years, but also the total executive compensation of the PGA Tour increased dramatically during that period. So if you look at basically base salary remained about the same in that period of time. But if you look at the bonus compensation for the entire executive staff, and those are the folks that are listed on the Form 990, you've got to tell people what your executives make, basically, if you're a not-for-profit organization. It went from $17.9 million in 2019 to $37.2 million in 2023. Now, I think one thing that Money in Sport gets wrong here is the thought that this was attached to something related to LIV or something like that. That this is really attached to, from what I gather, the PGA Tour's rights deal, right? The new rights deal kicked in, purses increased, and probably as part of that, executive compensation increased. And so executive compensation relative to other staff at the PGA Tour headquarters, that also that exasperated that ratio. So that may cause a problem internally, may not. But one thing that will be interesting to see starting with the 2024 return is the creation of PGA Tour Enterprises and moving money into that, moving assets into that, because that's going to be what holds the intellectual property of the PGA Tour moving forward. That's the vehicle by which Strategic Sports Group can invest in the PGA Tour, the $1.5 billion already, another $1.5 billion, perhaps if the Saudis get involved or other people that we haven't even talked about yet. That's where all those assets are going to go. That's going to be a different thing. And you're going to see a lot of money move around in terms of accounting next year, starting next year. But one thing you may start to see also is slashing of executive compensation, because with the Strategic Sports Group putting money in, they're going to want a return on their investment. They're not just going to dole out the cash and give it to anybody who's got a C in front of their title, chief, whatever. That's probably subject to substantial change. And so that's something to take to think about moving into next year. But then some other things I think that are kind of important is that, one, the PGA Tour had an operating loss in 2023, a $62 million loss compared to the prior 2 years combined, a $65.4 million net operating profit. Now, is a not-for-profit supposed to have a net operating profit? It can vacillate back and forth. It's not supposed to zero out every year. That's not how it works. But not-for-profit just means you're not supposed to make exorbitant amounts of money. And since the PGA Tour is largely a pass-through organization in terms of prize money, right? Takes that prize money, takes it in, gives it out to players, right? So really this line item of net operating money, profit, whatever you want to call it, that figure is based on PGA Tour investment income. That could be based on the valuation of their properties. That could be based on selling things. That could be based on selling stock. There's a lot of different things that can kind of go into that. But what it sounds like the big culprit here is poor investment management by the PGA Tour. And I'm not going to get all the way into that. I would just recommend that you read this, and I'll put a link out so that you can check out the newsletter. But the real important thing here, I think most people are going to walk away with, is that Jay Monahan makes a staggering amount of money. I mean, $23 million per year puts him obviously pretty high on the money list. Not Scotty Scheffler money, who made, $64-ish million, but it's a substantial amount of money. So I think that is going to be a continued heated subject. You've got Ron Price walking away from the chief operating officer role. You're going to have a CEO coming in who's going to kind of take over some pieces of that job, of Jay Monahan's job. Monahan's going to be the inside the ropes guy. The CEO is going to be the outside the ropes person, whoever that is. And they're going to have to figure that out together. You're going to have to compensate that person. You have to compensate them richly to be able to take that job because you know what the commissioner is making. So executive pay in that sense, they're going to take probably Ron Price money, add something to it, and all of a sudden you've got CEO compensation package. So that's something we're going to have to find out. Obviously, they're hoping to figure that out as soon as possible, find their candidate, identify their first choices, see if they can get those first choices. This is a big job, so they should be able to get it. And then we should see that compensation package in the 2024 tax return. So some things to take away from that. Really interesting stuff to look at. Is wonky. I completely admit it's wonky. It's not the sexiest subject there's ever been. But as a better understanding of how the PGA Tour is changing can really be found in that document. It's not all the way in the weeds, but it's enough in the weeds for the average person to kind of get a better flavor of it. Tiger Woods is 49 in our second story of the day. He turned 49 today, born December 30th. And that is one of the best birthdays, I guess, there is in sports because you've got LeBron James in there as well. So two of the greatest of all time in any kind of sport, born on the same day, obviously not at the same time. And I think there's a lot of hope here for Tiger Woods' birthday, primarily because of the PNC Championship. Again, he's 1 year away from getting eligibility to the PGA Tour Champions. And for those of us who grew up watching him when you were younger, and I'm going to turn 42 in just a space of 4 months from today. And 1997 doesn't feel that long ago. 1996 doesn't feel that long ago when he made his pro debut. 97 winning the Masters is probably the breakthrough moment for a lot of people. It doesn't feel that long ago, but it was 27 years ago. And here we are. You know, Tiger's a 22-year-old Masters champion and now is a 15-time major champion, a 49-year-old guy who's had 6 back surgeries, countless other procedures, a lot of knee scopes over the years. He's had a lot of damage done to his body. A lot of that's been caused by his own, I wouldn't say negligence, but own activity. Obviously, the car wreck in Los Angeles from a few years ago has accelerated probably the timeline of some of these surgeries and issues, right? Compound fracture in the foot. It's hard for him to walk. And that just kind of changes how your entire body works. That creates damage on the back. He had multiple back surgeries as it was. So all of that kind of compresses. He has the back surgery in September, keeps him out of action. But then he showed up at the PNC Championship and he walked. He didn't use a cart. He walked for the 36-hole scramble. Yes, it's in Orlando. Yes, the golf course is flat. But he also played really, really well in those 36 holes. Now, he obviously got to rely on his son's 180 mile per hour ball speed and also his son's hole-in-one to catapult them forward. But he was a pretty decent participant in the competition. The question mark is, what can he do? And I doubt that he's going to play in the Genesis, but maybe he does. But what can he do to prepare himself to play on the PGA Tour in any capacity before the Masters? Can he get himself well enough to play at Riviera? Riviera is a pretty easy walk once you get down from the first tee into the valley. Otherwise, it's not that tricky of a walk. So maybe he goes and plays that. He does have a permanent exemption into the signature events, all of them outside of the Century, because they have crafted an exemption category specifically for him. Well, technically, it's for players who have 80 PGA Tour wins or more, but there's only one of those guys hanging around, right? That's Tiger Woods. So he can get into any signature event at any time. Will he take advantage of that? I highly doubt it. Maybe if he's just feeling up to it. But really, it's an opportunity for him to go and play his event. Maybe if he feels up to it, to play Bay Hill or Memorial, he can get into those events and not have to worry about it. He's guaranteed access to them. But I think the thinking, at least for 25, would be, hey, if he could go play Genesis, then go play the 4 majors, that would be a big win for fans of Tiger Woods. There are a group of people out there who are Tiger diehards who are convinced the return to glory could still happen yet again, that he could win one more time on the PGA Tour, own the PGA Tour wins record outright, win a 16th major, whatever that is. I think it's fair to say most people feel that's out of reach, right? Golf has moved on from Tiger Woods competitively, maybe not in terms of viewership. People still want to watch him and his son play in the PNC. The ratings were tremendous for that event. However, I think the days of expecting the Tiger is going to do something miraculous, I think they're wasted. They're that's wasted breath thinking that Tiger's going to suddenly roll back the years yet again. We're 5 years removed from that incredible 2019 Masters win, probably the greatest Masters victory of all time. I still think 86 is probably the most important to me, but man, 2019 is incredible. And I think people are kind of starting to appreciate that. We're also at the point now where we're at 25 years of the Tiger Slam next year. I talked with Kevin Cook for my interview podcast, the 19th Hole Golf Show, about his book about the Tiger Slam. Just came out. Highly encourage you to check that out, the book and the podcast. That's something that really set in with me with talking with Kevin is we're at 20. It's been a quarter century since that happened. I mean, obviously the quarter century really of the Tiger Slam being completed happens in 26, but the beginning of it happened 6 months from now, basically. That's when it starts at the U.S. Open, which was at Pebble Beach that year. Just incredible stuff to think about that it's been that long. And in many facets, I still think it is an underappreciated achievement, primarily because people seem to insist at the time that it didn't matter as much because it didn't happen in a single calendar year, which is one of the stupidest things I have ever heard, because no one's had all four in their possession at once, not in this construction of what a Grand Slam is. And I'm pretty certain no one ever will again. And yet still there's kind of people out there who go, it's not quite a Grand Slam. I think it gets more impressive every year that there's not someone who does it. And now we've got someone in the person of Scottie Scheffler who is a prolific winner, who has figured out how to be a prolific winner. Does that mean Scottie Scheffler is going to win more than 50 times on the PGA Tour? I have no idea, and I'm not trying to say that. But you have someone now who is such a prolific winner, a guy who wins really, it makes it look easy. Let's put it that way. It's not easy, but he makes it look really easy. And by doing that, I think you could put it into better context, because you've got in Scheffler a guy who has won, 15-ish times in the last couple of years, last 3 years. And he has 2 Masters to show for it. And if you look at what Tiger did early in his career, you obviously have the 97 Masters win, skip a year, you get the 99 PGA. That starts to kind of validate the work with Butch to re-engineer the entire swing. And then this run from 2000 through 2002. I mean, that's the best it's been. That's the best it's ever been, in my view. And for him to continue on that path a couple of different times. You have the 05-06 run that's really great. You have 08, which I still think is one of the most underrated seasons in the history of golf, because it's capped off by injury, but also by the dramatic U.S. Open title. And then the comeback of 18 and 19. I mean, those are different periods that are incredible for different reasons. But that 2000 to 2002 stretch, we'll throw in the 99 PGA just because. That run of golf, you try to compare that to what Scottie Scheffler is doing now in a similar amount of years, and the major count, the victory count, all of that stuff, advantage Tiger. And I think it makes it seem even more incredible what he accomplished back then. All right, last thing to talk about today, another change for Viktor Hovland. Well, Viktor Hovland apparently broke his right pinky toe on a bed frame. I don't know what the circumstances are exactly around that, but he did show a picture of it on Instagram. It said bed frame 1, me 0. So we know he's dealing with that. That doesn't mean he can't play golf. He's still on the field for the Century this week. But another big change, other than being one of the injured on the injured list, is he broke up with Joe Mayo yet again, his golf instructor. It was a weird year for him. Got to go between basically 3 instructors in a calendar year. Winds up going away from Joe Mayo once again. Really the only breakout moment that Viktor Hovland had in 24 was nearly winning the PGA Championship, frankly, out of nowhere. And then kind of going back to where he was, still searching for answers. He has become a notorious tinkerer, kind of the Patrick Harrington of his generation, someone who is just interested in getting things perfect and almost letting perfect be the enemy of good. Hopefully for Hovland, he lands in a place where he can find some stability in terms of his coaching, obviously his health, want to get his pinky toe better. But just trying to get everything right can kind of lead to a lot of problems in this game. And he is an incredibly powerful, very capable player who has demonstrated he can win at nearly the highest level of the game or at the highest level of the game. He's done those things. And I think he kind of needs to find a way to settle into being an extremely good player who can work on some flaws, right? He got better at chipping. He got better at putting. Working on those things and almost kind of showing a Dustin Johnson-like resilience to work almost exclusively on those things so that he can maximize the other talent that he has, get the most out of it, make the most money, win the most trophies, win a major or two. He's got the game in him. And unfortunately, he's put himself in a position where he's trying to change coaches, trying to change swings, trying to change everything about himself instead of just realizing he's one of the best golfers in the world. One of the 10 best, in my opinion. And when he plays his best game, he's right up there with one of the 3 best. So hopefully for him, he'll find in 2025 some peace around all those facets of coaching and start to lock in to be the golfer he was a couple of years ago when he had his best season to date. That's going to do it for us on the show today. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. I appreciate it. You can subscribe to the show if you're watching on social media. Appreciate that too. Watch us on Golf News Net TV. You can find us on Free Live Sports and Freecast. And so you'll be able to find us on a number of platforms, including Multi-TV, TCL, Zeem, Local Now, and also in the Golf News Net app for Roku, Android, Apple, Amazon TV, all kinds of stuff coming down the pipe in 25. So more announcements of that to come. I have another show tomorrow for you. We get ready for the full week of the century, the last show of 2024. And then we kick into full gear with 2025, full steam ahead. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time on 2 Off the First.